In the opening verse of the Book of Mormon, Nephi includes two seemingly incidental words that, on closer examination, are both rich and potent. Having seen. What a marvelous phrase. You could write a book on those two words alone. Time limits what we can touch on here, but let's dive into their importance a bit, tapping at their meaning, focusing on their value to you. Seen has the sense of having experienced or gone through something. It carries a meaning of personal observation with any combination of senses. But it also refers to having had your eyes opened, as in having something revealed and understood, something that makes a change in the viewer. It also refers to finally admitting something. At the basic level, see, seeing, and seen all refer to visual sight, what our eyes take in. This is a marvelous gift that we often take for granted. So many parts of our body intertwine to enable our eyes to interpret light and dark, shape, motion, and depth, to produce a continuous stream of images for our protection, edification, and for just getting us through the day. The effectiveness of sight lies in accurately processing what you see. Nephi uses the phrase, having seen, as a way of telling us that he had experienced things. In this case, he tells us he had gone through many afflictions. We will talk about afflictions in our next get-together. Extending that definition, seeing in part refers to giving objective meaning to what we see. That is, recognizing that a fast-approaching blob of light and dark is a tree, and if we don't turn our bicycle right now, we will run into it. A higher level of seeing requires that we open our minds to interpret what is presented to our eyes. This is something we do when we recognize that not only is that thing we passed a tree, it is a life giver, a home for millions of tiny creatures, a potential source of food, a peaceful place for a nap, and a great place to hide in when being chased by a bear. We take in meanings far beyond superficial forms, realizing a thing's relevance, importance, power, position on a scale of goodness to badness, and an almost infinite level of further meanings. We will use the example of an infant to illustrate these meanings. One of the first things a newborn girl sees is a large, dark shape pressing against her face. As she grows, the child begins to assign meanings to it, including nourishment, comfort, and love. Later, she identifies that presence as her mother. Further growth helps her see that lovingly interacting with her mother helps them both be happy. She then graduates to appreciating that mother for trying to keep her safe by, for instance, preventing her from touching hot stoves. From there, she grows to see her mother as a wise counselor she would do well to value. Later, she acts upon the counsel given by her mother when in her own hot stove situations, expanding her understanding of those words and incorporating them into her daily life. Further, as that daughter becomes a mother and raises her own children, she can see and internalize what her mother went through in raising her. Her mother's experiences, in essence, become her. Finally, when we are in the presence of God and see ourselves and those around us with His perspective, we will see the potential and purpose mothers have in His eyes and the impact those women have had on generations of their descendants and on through eternity. We have opened our hearts and gained ultimate sight. Nephi's parents were examples of this kind of sight. They instilled in their children the confidence, the vision to handle incredible challenges, and to raise themselves to the mountaintops God planned for them. None of their lives turned out as they had planned. When do they ever? But with the help of God, they triumphed over their obstacles and raised powerful generations. Eyes can be opened through good counsel, as well as they can through small events accumulating over time. Too often, however, some eyes are only opened through tragedy. Christ talked about people having eyes to see but not seeing, one of the great tragedies of this life. He described himself as the source of light, the illumination of truth in darkness, the ultimate enabler of true vision. He gave and continues to give sight to the blind, which includes you and I, both figuratively and actually. Speaking of blindness, how many of us refuse to see what we are shown? Accidental blindness means that we no longer process images. Intentional blindness means that we close the eyes of our understanding so that we no longer process truth. Spiritual blindness is the process of blocking impressions that give meaning to events and things, an avoidance process we employ to try to hide from responsibilities and consequences. What will it take before we finally see as we are seen and see the Lord eye to eye? What consequences does blindness bring us? Let's pivot to the subject of affliction, one of the nearly inevitable results of blindness, and see how we can deal with and learn from it.